that is your DNA. You act like a lot of those companies. So, from an apples to apples, most of our customers are out there. Many of them are your customers as well. There's a lot of synergy, whether it's leak surveys and so forth, and smart meters and meter reading on the utility side, or infrastructure maintenance, or connects and disconnects on the telecommunications side, or managing detailed facilities, the Publix and the Krogers. Our customers use the system just the way that you would, whether it's your direct employees or your subcontractors. And again, maybe there are some already great synergies out there and ways to work together beyond using the software through introductions to the Florida Power and Lights of the world that I know that you're doing some work for.
Okay, thank you.
And then lastly, this is a series of our channel partners. We have, work with GE, who OEMs our solution as FFA. We have a great team of implementation partners, companies like Logica and Infotech. Though we have a great implementation team here in the States, these are organizations that help us implement across the globe. And then we have some great technology partners that we sit on, whether it's an Oracle database, IBM WebSphere, to an Esri and Google Maps, to iDashboards for our performance management tools. This is the list of the demo flow. Ian, if you want to walk through the demo flow and how we're going to walk through the demo and what we'll actually see today, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. So I think this is the last slide then, right?
Yeah, this is the last slide.
Unless we need to go into any of the technology or infrastructure details afterwards. So
before though Ian gets into that, is there any questions on anything that we showed you? Great. Go ahead, Ian.
So really all we're trying to portray here is the various roles of users or sources of data within G4. And G4 is a web-based application, and when you log in, as we still log in a minute, we'll log into the system, we'll have certain rights and certain privileges as a user that we log in, and that determines the role that we have within the system. And so the flow of data is really around creating work, and so you can see we have lots of systems out here that might be the originators of work. So it's often the case that when the system is deployed, the data flows in from a CRM or from Timberline or some other external system. Work can originate within G4, and we'll go through that. And there may be some aspects of work that you want to originate within G4, but in general, we're going to accept the work from outside. And the first human role within the system is we designate it as the CSR. And really the significance of the CSR within G4 is capacity-based appointment booking. And it's not necessary to book an appointment for a job, but if you need to, if someone else has to be on site at the time that the work takes place, then you can book an appointment, and G4 provides services to the CSR to enable them to book in real time against actual capacity based on the existing workload. So if you like, we're looking at the schedule, we're looking at the availability, and we're telling you when slots are available to complete the task. The next role is the dispatcher. Traditionally, it's been a dispatcher in a back office. We put dispatcher team leader these days because more and more we're seeing the role of managing the work moving out to the field, so that there's always still a role for a back office dispatcher who's watching a dispatch board and managing the activity, but there's also a role for field supervisors or individuals who have responsibility for 2 or 3 other crews or groups of resources who want to manage and take care of the work throughout the day. So we'll spend quite a lot of time on both the dispatch board and discussing the mobile aspects of that activity. And that blends in with the field technician role, which is pretty clear to everybody. We have various ways to enable field technicians and subcontractors and third parties to get the work that they've been assigned and report progress against it throughout the day and to capture that information back into the system.
We're gonna spend some time on the field technician as traditional employee, somebody that uses a device. But again, field technicians, both from a scheduling perspective as well as from a mobile reporting, your subcontractors can be treated just like employees, or they can be treated as, I think Charles told us, is that most people don't do more than 25% or so of their time as an organization, and you might be feeding them hundreds of jobs or dozens of jobs, and then they are managing their resources. So we'll show you on the dispatch board how a different view of how you can allocate lots of work out to an entity, and then they can in turn give to their people, and you can see what's the status of the work, whether they're reporting up through a portal or on a bring your own device or email or IVR. There's all kinds of flavors to extend this to your subcontractor world if you don't want to treat them like, you know, a traditional employee.
Right.
Yeah, and just a clarification, what you just described is actually Donna's group and her enterprise services. We also have everybody else on here looking at this to see whether or not it meets the requirements for their organization, which would be different from that.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification. So we understand better that.
So the other swim lanes here really represent other roles within the system that we tend not to focus on during the demo, but we can, of course. So there is within G4 a complete spare parts management functionality, including warehouse operations, cycle counting, automatic replenishment, moving parts around within the warehouses, as well as mobile parts activity. We'll certainly look at mobile parts. We can, if necessary, look at the back office, but I imagine you're doing that kind of stuff in Timberline, and would expect an interface from Timberline to FFA to G4 for parts if needed.
That's correct.
And then there's other roles like the customers, third parties, really, you know, subcontractors, part suppliers, and customers or end users, consumers of services could have access to the system, could have a role in the system, and relatively limited functionality about that. And the list goes on. But the highlighted ones are the ones we're going to focus on, unless you take us into other territory. So does that sound reasonable? Let's kick it off.
We're going to show you some of the processes that Charles talked to us about. We have this concept of plateaus of excellence, and we think it's one of the differentiators that we bring forth. Obviously, we want to get the system up and running in the most useful, immediate, go-to-market manner that meets all your basic needs. We want to make sure that you also understand the sophistication of the system and how it can grow with you. You don't have to turn everything on right away. It can be as simple as manual dispatching with some level of automation and a kind of a crawl, walk, run. So, you know, as we show things today, we're going to try to show some very sophisticated things. We'll try to pull the reins back occasionally to let you know that not everything needs to be turned on. It doesn't need to be, you know Star Wars to start. It can be whatever level that you want. But just understand that there's lots of levels of sophistication and plateaus that you can constantly achieve at new levels when you're ready to to drink from that fire hose.
Okay, so here we are. We're about to log into G4. And G4 is a mature product. It's G4 because it is the 4th generation of the product. It's been in use for many years and has evolved primarily through either acquisitions, when we acquire other companies, pieces of functionality roll into it, or mostly through customer input and demand. And we'll try and review maybe some of the features that are going to emerge in future releases as we go along. But this is version 11 of G4, and it's currently in use. This is the core product. There's no embellishments here, and currently in use around the world by many different customers. Yeah. Most customers, some customers stay on the version that they go live with, and they're happy with that. Most customers tend to stay up to date. As new functionality comes out, they're entitled to it, so they want to get it. So I've just logged in as a user. This user is a dispatcher, so needless to say, we're seeing the dispatch board here. This user is actually quite empowered to see a lot of data and do a lot of things, which is good. We'll go through actually the process of creating a job. What we're going to do, I'll show you the script. This is the script that we sent out this morning just to sort of preview what we're going to do. We're really going to create 2 kinds of work, and then we'll look at some of the performance management tools as well. So in this first step, there's a thing called an installation project, which is a fairly complicated job. And we'll go through the process of creating that, assigning part of it to the technician. Then we'll go over to the mobile application and step 4 and actually execute the work, and then come back and maybe see how the results of that execution affect the rest of the project. So that'll give us a good tour of most of the functionality, and we'll focus quite a bit on mobile. We'll go all the way through the mobile client in that step. And then we're going to do a similar sort of thing, but in this second scenario, we're just doing a service call. We're going to look at the dispatch board in a lot more detail there. We're going to assign it to a subcontractor, and then we'll look at a couple of different views that subcontractors could have of the work and how they could interact with it. Including the scenario here when we say log into the portal of Schwartz Dispatch. If you have a big subcontractor firm with a lot of technicians and you want to give them access to the system kind of on that right-hand column as a third party, you can do that, and they can dispatch their own work if you choose to do that. So that's sort of the second little vignette. And then we'll look at our performance management dashboards and reporting tools and have some discussion about how all of that maps in. As long as that all makes sense to you. If there was something else you were expecting to see, certainly yell out at any time, and we can go into any other aspect of the system. We've got plenty of time here, so we will be able to get through this quite comfortably and have lots of time for discussion as well.
I did want you to show them some of the capabilities of your native application on your smartphone.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So right there. So we'll we'll log in this first stage when we do the major tour of when we talk about MCP. So this is a little bit of technology, but that's our mobile computing platform. We'll go through that. And then we'll switch to the iPhone or iPad version of that application, and we'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. So before going any further, though, before going into the creating of the project, I just want to point out a couple of the sort of data structures that are used within the system. So I'm logged in as a user, and if you notice, we're looking at, it says up here, the zone is Portland. So we're looking geographically at the Portland zone. We divide the database up using 3 primary dimensions. There's a thing called a center, and a center is a vertical subdivision of the company. So if you have different business units within TrueNet that are doing different kinds of work, then you might choose to set them up as different centers within the system. People report to centers. Centers have certain scheduling rules associated with them. They have calendars associated with them and things like that. So if you notice, this user is entitled to see these 4 centers, in fact, all of the centers in the database. When you create a user, when you authenticate them in the system, you determine which centers they're associated with. And you might only have a dispatcher who can just see infrastructure, for example. In this case, those are just the resources that they're going to see. They wouldn't even know that those other centers existed.
Yeah, so we can slice the world up to Donna with enterprise and Walter with wireless and Luke with broadband and John with telecom and however, if that's the way things you want them to do, and then we can further subdivide them into zones. You know, broadband east, broadband west. If that's how the world is divided, you know.
Right, geographical zones. And we'll look at zones in a good bit of detail, but a zone is a hierarchical entity. So if people are used to working a relatively small patch of territory or a well-defined patch of territory, you can maintain that, but you can also blur the boundaries by having, as you'll see, sort of greater zones beyond those that people can work in if need be. So those are 2 main dimensions, and then the other dimension is the department. So we have different departments. You can put people in departments, and departments have skills associated with them. So when you put somebody in the installations department, they inherit the installation skill. That's the only significant point there. So we'll come back and I'll do these queries and we'll talk about the screen a lot more. We're going to start now by just creating a call. And so I'm going to click on this call creation button here, tab, and we will search for Portland. I'll search for everything in the Portland area.
We should actually talk about nomenclature with call.
Absolutely.
So we have a hierarchy. We have lots of different hierarchies in the organization. As we just mentioned, we have centers and zones and departments and so forth. So from your infrastructure, we also have hierarchies with customers and sites and so forth. While we're not often the asset management or the CIS, we have a very robust system that we can act that way. So we can either be, while we're not usually the master, we can be the slave to the Sage or Timberline or anything that is there, we can be pushed over. With regards to work orders or projects or installations, our hierarchy is, we call it, the order entity is called a call. In some of our customers, because we have a business language and as well as a language conversion model, that if you folks call things work orders or jobs or actions or whatever you call them, we can convert that call to be your whatever nomenclature is comfortable with you. underneath that call, there can be unlimited things that we call actions. So for every call, most service calls are typically a one call, one action entity, and the action is the thing that gets scheduled. However, for complex projects, there can be hundreds, dozens to hundreds of actions underneath each call. And those actions can have dependencies. They can be, start to end dependencies. Things can be done in parallel. Every one of those actions can be independently scheduled by to an individual or a crew. So the system can replicate the most complicated, complex project from a timberline, multi-day, new installation of a wireless, infrastructure for a customer, 100 different banks in the city of Cincinnati are going to get, new wireless infrastructure, cameras, security, whatever it is there, all of that can be deployed in the system within a call.
So we're in the log a call screen process here, and the first thing we need to know is where we want to go. So we did a search here for customer and site information within the database. Site being the entity where work takes place. Now, if work comes in from Timberline, we don't really have to have customer or from external systems. We don't have to have customer and site in the database. If you're going to log in manually, you typically search for a site, and if it's not there, you create it. But a job that comes in from an outside system just has to have an address with it. As long as it's got an address, we can deal with it. So now I've selected that location, so we know where we're going to go. We're going to go to 12 Central Avenue, Cortland, New York. And the only mandatory fields on this screen, mandatory fields are indicated with a little red asterisk on every G4 screen. So the only mandatory fields are the dates and the call type. What is it you want to do? So you can see there, I select from call type. There's a fairly short list of different kinds of calls that can be created in the system. And the call type defines the one or more actions that the call consists of, and things like the estimated duration, the skill requirements, the service window, the parts required, the resource type that's going to be assigned. In other words, all of the characteristics of the work that we need to know in order to schedule it is defined by the call type itself. So if I selected, say, service call, you'll see down here some of these characteristics changed. It got a 32-minute estimated duration. The required date from, required date to is, looks like a week or a week and a day. Start to end time is week and a day. It can be done by an engineer or a crew. They have to have the skill service call. So nothing too complicated about that. It's simply saying, in order to assign this job, this is how much time you've got to find, and these are the characteristics of the resource that it's going to look for. Given that information, G-Core can then go ahead and automatically assign the work. Over here on the right, because we've selected a site, I have the option to talk about specific equipment at that site. So if I just do a find here, came up on a different window on a different screen, this lists the serialized assets that are located at that site. So again, it's optional, but if you've got that information and you want to dump it into G4, if you don't have it anywhere and you want to capture it in G4, then you have the advantage of being able to create work against specific pieces of equipment, which means, number one, we capture the warranty information, so we know if it's under warranty or not. And number two, we're building up history against that piece of equipment, so you can see the total cost of service by serial number, and you can make decisions about mean time to replacement and things like that, right within G4. Now, if you're capturing all this data elsewhere, then you make all those decisions elsewhere, and that's a perfectly valid thing to do, in which case the whole call creation process is pretty simple. Now, in this zip through, though, we're not going to do a service call. We're going to do a project. We're going to do a fairly complicated task. I'm going to create an installation project. So I select that call type, and you notice that this field has now become available. It's called the call template. So what this means really is that I've defined a call type of new installation project, but I've got various flavors of this. There could be as many as you want, and the flavor really might indicate the complexity or some of those scheduling characteristics, the duration, the skills, the parts, and so on. So it doesn't matter. I'll select custom installation. I'm just going to go ahead and log the call, and we'll go take a look at it. So now it tells me we've created a call within the system, 319453. I'm just going to click on call summary here, and we see what we've got. So in order to have done that from an outside system, there's really just those 4 bits of information you've got to give us. Where are you going? What's the call type? And because this was a call of a complex call type, the installation, the template, and with those 4 bits of information, we can build up this whole picture of the job that's going to be taking place. So you can see here's the summary information about the customer up on the top left here. This obviously we got from selecting that site in the first place. Here's the summary information about the piece of equipment that we created this call against. Because we've got that part, because we've got that serialized part, I can click on things like product history and see the history of work that's been performed against this particular piece of equipment. Because we selected a site, I can see if there are open or completed jobs against the site. That looks like there's one completed job in the site plan survey against that site. Very interesting, but you know, we have a purging mechanism, but you can set that to be any timeline you like. So you could build up history in G4 forever if you chose to do that. And then what's significant down here is, and this goes to what Len was referring to, is we created a call, but that call consists of 6 actions. Each action is an assignable event. So each action is going to get assigned to someone, it's going to get scheduled, and some work is going to take place. And so you can see the sequence here is survey, provisioning, wiring, installation, inspection, and training. Only the first one is open. This is in an open status. The rest are on hold. There's an estimated duration, and notice we've got a mix here of short and long duration work. So you may have jobs that are going to be completed within one shift, 2 hours and 30 minutes, but you can have other actions within a call that can exceed one shift. You say it's going to be a 5-day job or a 25-day job. Makes no difference to us. We chop it up and fit it into the shift as best we can via a process we call segmentation. Chop it up into sensible segments. So I can select, as I select each one of these, you can see the details on the right. So even though we didn't select, for example, equipment installation, the system looked at the template which you would have defined, and it said, okay, the equipment installation takes 3 days, can be done by an engineer or a crew, but they have to have the equipment installation skill, and there's certain materials that are required, so some pipes and some filter cases and valves and stuff like that. The parts, incidentally, list can be used in one of 2 ways. Our goal is to try and schedule this as automatically as possible. One way is to require that it only be assigned to engineers or crews that have this material in stock, and the other way is to use it as a trigger, so that when the job gets assigned, we're going to ship the material. We generate a transaction to ship the material out to either the van or to the customer site, depending on how you want to sort of store material prior to the work. So this is more relevant in the case of a long duration job. If you're going out somewhere to do a big job, you probably want to stage all the material at a warehouse, put it out to the site, and have it arrive in conjunction with the scheduled arrival time of the crew.
So, question for you, because a lot of times after we complete the survey, we don't know when the other events are going to occur after that. I'm assuming you can schedule it whenever you have that information.
In this scenario, that's why that was on hold, actually. So the only rationale here is to schedule the survey, and then when the survey is complete, either the guy who does the survey or someone else, maybe it's a project manager, comes back to this screen, maybe makes adjustments to these. Maybe the duration has changed. Maybe the materials have changed.
Maybe they add an action.
Maybe they add an action. Yeah, I can add actions, or I can add templates to this and create a much more complex job as a result of the survey. Then you would go in and either manually release these from hold, or automatically. You may have a process. We have a process that says, once I've fully completed the survey, then I'm going to release the rest of the job from being on hold, and then it can be scheduled based on the data that's provided after the survey.
Yeah, we also have a whole workflow engine, BPM, business process management tool, that can be invoked to automatically do this as well. So sometimes you might do the survey and don't get the job or something like that, or you get the survey and, as we said, it's much more complex. There can also be a whole set of dependencies between each of these actions. So it says, do the survey, but don't do, the provisioning, or the provisioning can be done in parallel to the survey. So we can turn on and create start to end dependencies, action to action dependencies. Things can be done in parallel. Likewise, some things require appointments, and some things just have SLAs or time that you don't need to get into premise and so forth, and people just go about their business, and the system schedules. So for the very first thing, like a survey, or a new a new connect or disconnect if you're doing work on behalf of, Bright House Communications, and they're, you're acting as their cable connection company, and you need to get in there and say, when's Mrs. Smith going to be home for 4 hours so that she can get her, triple play put in there. So in the process of getting that order put in, you would want to book an appointment. So this appointment booking screen wouldn't come in this screen. It would be part of your Sage or Timberline, people who are on the phone or salespeople communicating and taking the order. Up would pop the appointment booking screen, or in this case for the first survey, because you need to get in premise. And this is an interactive discussion you're having with the customer. It says, what works for you, Mr. Customer? What slots? These slots can be defined, and you want to have a win-win. The ones that are colored are good for you, the entity, because you already have people in that location. So you can. This goes against the real-time capacity of the dispatch board. It's not a slotting system like most telecommunications companies have these days, where you kind of say, okay, we got 122 slots next Saturday, let's go fill up the slots. Well, if there's no interaction with real-time capacity and 20 of the slots get canceled because people call, the system doesn't gain those slots back, so there's a tendency to always overbook. This is real-time capacity against the time window that you have, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, whether it's morning appointments and so forth. We also have the ability to say, is the job getting done within that time window, or is the person just need to get there in that time window? If it's a 2 hour but the job takes 4 hours, we just have to show up in that time. And of course, there's all kinds of processes that can communicate out to delight the customer. So as the technician finishes job 1, they can communicate they're going on to job 2, and yes, that person will be there within that time window. So this is an interactive appointment booking screen that would pop up, in your CRM tool and be used by your customer, service representatives.
A couple of things just to point out on the screen, which are normal to all screens. So there's these 3 icons at the top here. Help. The question mark always gives you interactive, context-sensitive help wherever you might be. The paperclip is used for attachments, so you could choose, a diagram or a site plan or something like that and attach it to this work order. Now it's important to note that everything we're doing manually here is available through APIs. We've integrated so many times with so many different systems. Virtually everything in the system that you can do by hand, you can do via a transaction from an outside system. So if you had that site plan somewhere else, and when you created the job, you wanted to attach the site plan or any other number of documents to it, you could do that automatically. You don't have to do it manually at all. The envelope there is an internal messaging system. So within G4, there is a built-in messaging system that we use quite a bit. We use it for alerts. We use it for communication between different role players. Individuals can use it, of course. You can send messages to technicians or to other people should you want to do so. And the advantage of this over an email system is it's auditable, right? This is linked to the work order number. So at a future point in time, you could come back and say, show me all the messages relating to 319453, and you'll see everything that's in the system. So we'll see them. You'll see them on a few other screens as we go along. So that's kind of the creation of work phase. We've got the work. It's in the system. We now want to look at how it gets assigned and talk about how G4 schedules the work, which is really the meat and potatoes of the system, I guess. So let's go back to the dispatch board. I'm just going to click on the west here. Now we can see our jobs sitting down here. The works that we've created, including the ones that I took off hold, are now sitting down here. Actually, it's these 3. It was 319453. The other 2 are already there. And they're sitting there waiting for something to happen to them. Because in our environment here, everything's manual. We haven't switched on any real-time scheduling throughout the demo. Otherwise, it's easy to lose track of it. Once you've been using the system and you're comfortable with it for a while, we would expect you to have nearly everything automatically scheduled. So when work comes in that A001 open action status, the system should try and find the best person for the job and the best time for that job to take place and would assign it. There's you've got control over that. So if there's certain work that you want to keep hands-on, you can do that, and it will fall down into this queue, and you can manage it as you wish. But certainly, if you did nothing now, if we did nothing at nighttime or during some off-peak period, what we call batch scheduling is going to run, and it's going to try and resolve the problem that it solved last night. So it's going to take all of the work that can be scheduled and all of the resource work, and it's going to put the two together, and it's going to schedule them. That's how this work got up onto the dispatch board. So if this is not urgent work, then the best thing to do is nothing and let the system take care of it when it's ready. But if it is urgent work or it's work that you want to get hands-on during the day, then we either set up real-time scheduling, or else you can deal with it manually, which is what we'll do now. So even if you're going to assign work manually, there are many decision support tools built into the system that ensure that when the work gets assigned, it's assigned to the right people at the right time. And one of the easiest to use is to do what we call matching resources. So if we was to select this job, for example, so I set the checkbox there, I can just go up here to my query list and say, show me the matching resources. And what the system will do is essentially it's going to look at all of those characteristics of the job, the skill, the location. If we've set an appointment, then it will be looking at the service window and everything else, and it's come back and given us a list and said, well, if I was going to assign it, here are the people that I would assign it to. And it's given me this list of 4 people in sequence. So the best candidate for the job is Kimberly, probably because she's got nothing else to do, so we could do it right now. But the others are equally valid. So if I say I want Paul to do it, Paul's the best man for the job, I could assign it to Paul. If I know who I want to assign it to, the easiest way to assign it is just to drag it from here and drop it on the name. And by dropping it on the name, if I drop it on Todd Gibson's name, then the system will try and insert it into the route. So it's come back and it's told me that it's succeeded in doing that, 319453. And we need to go and find Todd again, of course, because we've got a lot of people here. Todd Gibson. Todd. Was it Todd Gibson? Yep. Todd Gibson. So it's inserted it right there. So in other words, that is the closest point, given the other work that was on his list. That's the closest geographical point, and it's inserted it into his route. So here I am. I'm doing it manually, but if that's the way you're going to do things, that's what the automatic process would do as well. So the best, what we find is in rolling out the system, we might start out doing things this way. As the work comes in, you do matching resources and drag the name. But once everyone's comfortable with the decisions that the system's making, you throw the switch and have that happen automatically as the work comes in. It's just going to get scheduled by the system.
Now, this is obviously a time-based scheduling. So one of the big things is that if the things need to be done within certain time windows and so forth, you can direct the technicians to do this. You know, it also pushes out to the mobile, and it sees all the work in this order that you recommend the system does. Now, again, if there's a lot of autonomy out there between the field technicians right now to do the jobs in whatever order they want, or things have less time constraints, you know, we can put them there as the best route, the best recommended, and you can just choose how much do you want to enforce this and so forth. We also have the stack mode dispatching, which is really something that is very common for the subcontractors, that just puts things in a list mode of to-do activities. Here's the 10 jobs that are assigned. You know, they need to be done today, but we don't really care what order they're in. So again, it has that flexibility to be very demanding from a time-based scheduling system to be, you know, hey, this is the person that has the right skills and so forth. Time-based is a little bit less critical for certain kind of jobs or for subcontractors, as long as they get it done and we can see what the status of the job is.
So let's now talk a bit more just about the controls on the dispatch board. I'm going to go and run another query here. Each of these queries, which we pointed out earlier, just reveals a different group of resources. So if I select the Customer Services Center, I see all of the resources. There's 13 resources in the Customer Services Center. The queries, incidentally, there's a role that we'll refer to as System Administrator. There's a key role within the system. And the System Administrator can define the layout of the user interface for each user type and also the set of queries that they see. But also as an individual, I can go in here, I can click on this little magnifying glass, and I can build up my own queries. So I could say I want to look at you know, the customer service center, but I just want to look at the eastern zone, and I only want to see, let's not say crews, but let's say field engineers, just field engineers that are not on crew. Right, so we'll do that. There, field engineers. And I have other controls that I can look for specific skills, specific capacities, proximity, and so on. So I've got a lot of functionality that I can build into this query, and then as an individual dispatcher, I can just save it. Tuesday. Run out of original ideas. If I make it default for this page, you notice I've got different pages here. Cortland East, Stack View, we'll look at some of these. And each one can have its own default query. So you can tailor the user interface to meet the specific sort of dispatcher or supervisor needs. And then that query is saved. Now that's saved for me. It's not saved for everybody. Obviously, I built a query that returned nothing, but there you are. I've added that query to my set. And next time I log in, it's going to be there, but I haven't upset anybody else. So it's a very malleable user interface. If you've got power users, they can set things up to match the way they work. If you've got less sophisticated people, you can define the user interface for them and keep it under control. So just sort of going left to right, just to explain some of the functionality here, we've got some controls that pertain to the individual. So Ann Smith is this individual that we're looking at, and Ann Smith is offline. So the red light there, the red box, indicates they're actually out of coverage. So we have a process that's constantly pinging all the mobile devices, and if they're out of coverage, it shows them as out of coverage. I don't think we have anyone logged in. What we do, this is, DL5 is logged in, so you can see there's a green. Actually, it's online, there's a real device, and is logged in. This is one of our demo users. So this just means that they're in coverage. The next icon is their status. What's the last thing they did? And this guy logged in, did nothing else. But there's other examples will be on lunch or on break or on site or en route, whatever it is they're doing at that present moment in time. Now, so we'll come back to the names. I'll click on the name. We'll look at the profile. The rest of the Gantt chart, really, that we're looking at here reflects the schedule that's been assigned to the resources. So people work different periods of time. You can see we've got people in this group. Some are working from 8 until 5. Some are working from 8 until 9. Some start even earlier at 6. I don't know if you can tell, but this area, this guy works from 6 until 4. But then from 4 onwards, they're on standby. So you can have unavailable time, which is gray, available time, which is the white area, and then available if necessary, which is what that means to us. Standby means if there's a job that has to be completed during the time period, during the shift, and there's no one else in the world who can do it, then the system will assign work into standby time. Everything else here represents work orders. So you can see these are actions that have been assigned to these resources. They're in different colors because they're in different statuses. If I click on the legend here, you can see that they go through a series of statuses. They go assigned, which is the green color. This means assigned by the scheduling system. And then they've gone into acknowledged status, actually, which is this blue. Between acknowledged and assigned, there's actually a status called dispatched, which means awaiting acknowledgement. And that's the status that sends it out to mobile. So these jobs, these assigned jobs, as the day goes by, will drip out to the mobile device. And so the technician doesn't necessarily see everything that's been planned for them for the next couple of weeks, but they see the ones that you determine you want to drip out. And the reason for that is twofold. One is to conserve bandwidth. You don't want to keep sending things out, and then if you change the plan, you've got to send it out again. But also, in some respects, you want to ensure that the technicians do work in the sequence that you plan it. If you've gone to the trouble of putting in a nice complicated scheduling system, then you really want people to work the jobs in the sequence that you plan them. You don't want them necessarily to look at the whole day and say, this is the one I want to do. I want to do 319215 at the beginning of the day because, you know, for some reason I need to do that. But that, again, is something that comes with comfort with the system. When it's tuned and you know it's matching your business objectives, then you can start to enforce those kinds of rules. Travel, yep, the gaps in the middle here. You can see between some of these jobs there's not much of a gap. Between other jobs there's a bigger gap. And the system is hitting a GIS system. In this case we're using Google Maps and calculating the travel time between each task. And if your objective is to minimize travel time, then that's what it's going to do. So you can see I just clicked on the status icon for this particular individual, and this shows the travel, the route, the sequence of jobs that are assigned to them. They're currently on site of that job, and the route that's been computed by the system using street level routing. And we have driving instructions here as well, and we can also put things like layers on top of the map. So right now all I've got in this environment is traffic. In another environment we have things like the infrastructure. So if you have a GIS that's showing you,
Like Small World.
that's showing you pipes and wires or valves and things like that, those can be superimposed on the map as well. If there's interest in that, I have that here. If there's interest in that, we can switch easily over and take a look at that in the other world.
We'll show a little bit on the, when we get to the mobile side, we'll show the interface to FieldSmart, the GE system that allows you to do things like leak surveys and so forth, launched out through our system. You can do redlining and circles and tagging and so forth. So for the leak survey departments and so forth, or the meter reading, if you want to launch and work off the assets right on the mobile GIS, whether that's an Esri or Small World, we have interfaces to those kind of systems that launched out through our mobile.
Yeah, I know specifically Luke had some large survey projects where he's surveying like poles in a given geographic area. Luke,
Yes, exactly. That would be a perfect example of that, or manhole covers, or you know, whatever it is. If you want to cascade and survey all that, we would launch out to the FieldSmart tool. We don't resell that. That is a GE product, but it could be any tool. It could be any tool.
It could be an Esri tool as well. So we'll come back to, we'll see maps again. All the maps are GPS enabled. So if these were real guys driving around with real trucks with either an AVL under the hood or a device that was providing GPS telemetry, we pick that up through the mobile client and show the real-time location as well as the planned route. Let's see, where do we go from here? So we've assigned our job. Let's talk a little bit more about just the work that's in here. Any job I can drill into. So if I can click on a job, I can see the details of it. So I see information about the job. Looks a bit familiar. This is kind of like the information that we saw at the call creation time. So you can always capture that information. Under certain circumstances, you can change some of it. So it doesn't always make sense to change the skill requirements, for example, once the job's assigned. But in fact, you can, and that can be a trigger to reschedule the work. If you went in and added a skill to this that the assigned technician didn't have, then the system would say, okay, I need to reschedule this one. It'll initiate that real-time scheduling operation that could have taken place at the creation time as well.
The dispatchers or supervisors can be omnipotent. You can give them as much power as you want to change the orders, to do things. As we have various rules and constraints in the system that help you lay down the best schedule, you can relax those rules and constraints for dispatchers so they don't get handcuffed and so forth. As they're dragging and dropping, things, rules get invoked. If somebody's too far outside of their driving distance, somebody doesn't have the right skill. If you're trying to assign something, you can empower the dispatcher to override those rules as well.
And skills can be assigned to individuals and teams, correct?
Exactly. We haven't really talked about crews too much, but we have the ability to manage both crews and individuals. A crew can be the union of multiple individuals or bucket trucks or unique pieces of equipment. They inherit the combined skills of that entity. And as we talk about a little bit later, there's a whole very powerful timesheet mechanism that individuals can record their time and as a byproduct of navigating and recording their events and actions and so forth on smart devices or in the system. It builds up a series of time. Subsequently, the crew leader can report the time for his or her crew and we'll show that a little bit later down the process.
Okay. So I just moved to another view because there are some crews here. So you can see we have individuals and we have crews. crews, once you've compiled the crew, it's just another schedulable resource. So if we click on, first of all, let's click on one of these. We click on a resource, we get into the resource profile screen. And this shows us what we know about the resource as opposed to the work. So you can see there's a resource type. They are assigned to a center and a department. They may or may not have a manager. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the mobile client. And so that's sort of some organizational data about the resource. They have a start and end location. So the system, when planning work, is planning it between those two. If they're the same, it'll tend to be a circle, but if not, it'll be a line between those two locations. They start from home and finish at the depot or something like that.
And you can also schedule crews too, not just to have people, but also have vehicles as well as established to it. So if you have trucks that are doing cell lines or cell towers that you need a bucket truck to get up and connect the lines, or any telco high wire lines, you can actually have a specific crew that has a specific bucket truck attached to it.
Right. We alluded to zones earlier on. Let me click on Update Zone. So every resource is assigned to at least one zone. The zone is just a geographical area. It can be defined as a zip code or a set of zip codes or a town, whatever attribute of the address you choose to use, or it can be a series of points of lat longs that define a shape. And with anything within that shape is considered in that zone. So this resource, you can see, is assigned to the eastern zone, and that means that when the system is scheduling, it's going to assign them work within that zone boundary only. But you can blur that, as we said. So if you decided that you were going to have a series of concentric zones, if you like, starting with a relatively small patch of earth and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then you could say, well, your primary zone is the east, but I'm also going to assign you to Cortland, maybe permanently, or maybe it's just for a period of time. And it may also just be for certain days of the week, if that made sense. It might just be at the weekends. And all that's saying to the system is, look, when you're planning work for the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, try to fill this guy's day up with work. It just did an update, with work in the east. But if you can't fill his day up with work in the east, or if the work in the east takes him so close to the boundary that it makes economic sense to pick up work outside of the east, do so, and it'll do that. And you can build any list of zone assignments for a crew or a resource as you want. Net result being that the traditional small territory can be adhered to, and the comfort and familiarity with that is adhered to, but you've got the flexibility to make good economical decisions should the need arise.
And even if those zones are huge and overlapping, the rules and constraints that get set up can trump the zones. For example, if you are, if you are in a zone that the east and west are very close and it's within a certain level of driving, say 50 miles, we will schedule somebody on that Tuesday to go and help out because they're the closest, best person with the right skill in the Cortland zone. However, if it's 200 miles away, it's not going to schedule that person because the rule, don't drive more than 50 miles, will trump the fact that they are in that. Now then you can go and look and use decision support tools to say, yes, I want to override that, and because of SLAs, I'm willing to send somebody 200 miles to go do that work because, I want to win the next contract.
Or you want to assign that person to the new zone.
Or you want to assign them to the new zone. Yeah, exactly.
And then he continues to perform work in that zone. And that happens a lot in our business where people move geographically from one area to another.
Yeah, it's, I mean, if you guys are, we have, we have customers using this in launching for outages. Obviously, if outages, everybody goes on,
For
emergencies or FEMA or something like
where
that.
They relocate.
And everybody becomes a lineman, for the week or the weekend, and we go into complete different mode of scheduling, and everybody is available for everything. Or as you said, hey, we want a new contract or a leak survey for Pacific Gas and Electric, and we're now we need 20 people to, parachute into, that territory, and we're going to take manage all the polls surveys for the next 3 months for those 20 people on a contract for PG&E, for example.
And how difficult is it to create new crews and and then assign or talk about their capability.
Well, let's look at, this is a crew, right? So let's first of all look at this crew makeup. If I go down to the bottom here and just click on crew members, so this shows me this crew is sitting here. The crew is sort of an abstract entity, and it consists of these three resources, individuals. And as we've said, we can also have vehicles or equipment or tools. Looks like everything's assigned, but were there vehicles available, I could move them into the crew as well. So I can, at any time, move individuals in and out of the crew. So I could change this crew lineup, I can take people and add them to the crew, and I can move people out of the crew via this user interface on a sort of crew-by-crew basis. If I need to create a new crew from scratch, I can do that. I can right-click here and say Create Crew, and I can put in the name of the crew. So maybe it's crew 99 or something like that. That's its ID, actually, so I don't want any spaces in there. Yeah. Something like this. I can assign it to a particular center and to a particular department right here, define its starting and ending address and so on, and then submit it. And once that's done, that crew, that's now a new entity, a new schedulable resource in the system, wouldn't have any, wouldn't have any members until you actually go and assign the members to it. Now again, all of this, you're seeing us do it through the user interface, and again, it's all exposed as APIs. So if you have a rostering systems, or if you have external systems where you're putting crews together today, I missed all the mandatory fields. I didn't take my message that the fields with stars on are mandatory, right? But let me at least do that. We've got all the mandatory fields done. This can either be done manually within the system, or it can be done automatically through interfaces from external systems. We're pretty comfortable with each. The crew is considered the sum of its members. So the members have a shift pattern associated with them. We go back to the profile screen. You know what, I'll just go to this individual's profile screen because I think we lost the other one. The shift pattern, this person happens to have a shift pattern assigned to them, which is like a calendar. Let me go down here and we can say shift pattern, just like everything else, is assigned for a range of time, and it defines the resources availability. If I said something like 9 to 5, then this is really a 7-day rotating shift pattern, 5 days on, 2 days off. Shift patterns can be anything. They can be as long or as short as you want. You can have 7 by 24 shift patterns and let the nature of the work define when work gets scheduled. The key point being that the availability of the crew is the intersection of the availability of its members. If between 6 and 9 there's only 2 people available, then it's a 2-man crew. If the third person comes on shift at 9 o'clock, then it's a 3-man crew, and so on.
And you can even drill down into the day details and make things partial days and so forth. It's quite powerful rostering, calendaring system.
The other thing we didn't point out was, to your question, is skills. We're back on the crew profile here, and you can see that in fact the skills of the crew are the sum of the skills of its members. So this is a 2-man crew, and so they all have the same skill profile by the look of things. So it's saying I've got collections times 2, and I've got equipment installation times 2. Now you can assign skills to the crew entity itself if you want to. It makes sense to do as I have done here. In general, though, I think if you went into a real production environment and looked at a crew, you wouldn't see that. You would just see crews being the sum of the members of the crew.
And all the skills can be time-based as well. So some of the skills, I'm sure, need certification. So we can set up alerts and triggers that if somebody has certain driving, license, for a certain kind of truck, or master, for electricians, or anything that needs to be recertified or class, that can be triggered by dates to say things are about to expire and so forth. So, it can be used as a training, monitoring vehicle as well.
Contractors are also treated the same way as we would a crew or an individual?
Yes,
subcontractors, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, subcontractors are, and you can give them all the skills and so forth. Again, you can make subcontractors an entity. For example, let's say it's Joe's telecommunications service subcontractors that you know, but you don't know that it's Ian and Glenn and John that work for Joe's, okay? You just want to give the work to Joe's telecommunications services up to 120 hours a week. So you know, so you make Joe's telecommunications services an entity, okay, that is set up that has 300% capacity or something like that, so that you can keep giving them work. You're not scheduling that work for 9 or whatever. You're saying it's got to get done. Here's the SLA. Get that installation done. But you're not giving it to Glenn or Ian or John. You're giving it to Joe's. But you know that the capacity is 300% or however you want. So you can keep giving work to Joe's telecommunication company equivalent to 3 people. Or you can have, you know, Joe's telecommunication company with Glenn, Ian, and John set up as individuals and drill down to that level.
You can even look at it as well as, you know, putting skills to Joe's telecommunication rather than Dan's telecommunication. So if Joe's has the workers that have the skills that are capable of doing, you know, long duration or complex work, and Dan's is more quick work, we can actually identify that as well, so you know which is which.
And over time, you'll want to set up different performance management to say, why do we keep giving it to Joe's telecommunications when he's not meeting our delays, you know, or he's charging us more money or whatever. So from the perspective of performance management, it is a tool that allows you to, you know, do a lot of different things. Say, you know, hey, here's what's the proper equilibrium between in-house and subcontractors. When do we want to choose to bring in more in-house people because we have enough work? Or, you know, when just kind of rating between subcontractors, why should we use one versus the other? And you know, they earn your favor.
Okay. Anyway, Joe is scenario 2. We should move over to mobile now, and we'll talk a little bit more about the dispatch board when we go through our second scenario and assign a job to a technician.
And again, one other thing that we will show too, will give you a glimpse of the new dispatch board, which has a lot of similarities to the old dispatch board, but we've had a lot more very leading edge user interface components that such as a prioritized to-do list. It kind of brings forth in a push technology the most immediate things that you need to deal with at your fingertips. A very integrated dispatch board with a map, a very powerful filtering tool. So we'll show that in a much sexier user interface in my opinion. But that's going to be launched. If you guys go live, you will be going live on that version because we will be launching it before the end of the year.
So now we're looking at the mobile client for laptops. This is what we call our mobile computing platform, and we're logged in as a user D019, this user, Rodney Williams. So before we go into it in too much detail, this is a very simple application that gets installed on the mobile device. This is actually its user interface here. It acts as a conduit between the user and the server. And what that means is that periodically it'll do a synchronization. You may have seen the dialog pop up once or twice. And that synchronization connects up to the back end, and it downloads any changes that have taken place since the last synchronization. It sends up any transactions that I performed as a technician since then. And the same infrastructure, that mobile computing platform infrastructure, is what we're using with our smart client as well, which we'll show shortly, which is essentially the same application made available on iOS and Android devices. So let's go through a little bit about what we're looking at here. First of all, this is an individual I've logged in as who has his own work. So these Rodney Williams, the assigned resource is on the left here, and I can actually, if I type in Rod, it'll filter the list. It'll just show me the work orders that are assigned to me. So as an individual, I can see that work, and these are the work orders in the sequence that they were scheduled, including the survey that we just put together, I think, or maybe that was a different one.
So Rodney's a working supervisor.
And it's showing the status of his work, right? But it also shows the other resources that he has responsibility for. So you can see that he has responsibilities for crew C3 and C0. And their work is listed there also, and their status, and he's got some visibility into that work. And in addition, he can see other work in their zones, in his zones, which are not currently assigned. So these ones at the bottom, the provisioning and the 2 surveys, are jobs that are not currently assigned and which he could assign. I could, for example, select this job and then come up here and assign, select assign, and I can assign it to myself, which is a way of saying, you know, over and above what the system's planned out for me, I want to take on other work as well. Or I could also assign it to some of the other crew members if I chose to do that. I have myself selected there. And I've got different techniques for actually doing the assignment. So I can just put it on my task list. I can run an online scheduling system, which is a way of what we did manually. It's a way of inserting the job into my route. Or I have various other tools available to me as a decision support mechanism that let me kind of take on the work. So this is something you would use for a more empowered field technician. If you have lesser empowered field technicians, then you may choose not to do that, in which case all you would see is the work that's assigned to you. All you would see is the actual work orders themselves. Now this is the employee type that's defining this. So where we saw crews and employees, we have different kinds of employee types, and you can define for each employee type the kind of access they're going to have to the application. Within any one of these jobs, the jobs that are assigned to the people who report to me, I can unassign it, and I can see what's going on. So I've got visibility into how, you know, if they're reporting information against this job, or if they're putting notes in and things like that. I've got visibility into that, but I can't actually go in and report those things for them. Whereas the jobs that are assigned to me, I can report different kinds of events, and I can progress it through the sequence of events. I'll talk a lot more about these events shortly, and also report data into it as well. So let's just go through the sort of geography of the application first and see what we've got available. So this is the work list. It's called the My Calls list. The next tab here is a calendar, and this is just showing me the work that's assigned to me today, well, during the week, yesterday, and it's also into the future. So I've got visibility into what's coming up. If you're running the scheduler into the future, then nothing next week, right? But I, as an individual, can see what's coming up and can perhaps make some decisions on the basis of that.
Actually, we have a lot of customers that run what we call tactical scheduling. It's running, obviously, very heavily the dispatch optimization for the day. And again, we have customers that days are very static, and customers, meaning 10 or 15 or 20% of their day has disruption or emergencies, to other customers that are very dynamic, where 60, 70, 80% of their day is very dynamic, and the system is running optimizations all day long and shuffling the deck. But very common to our customer base is that they run and plan out the day, so the work that you have today, and you're worried about that because that needs to be executed, but they run it 30 days out, a rolling 30-day, to lay down the plan so that you can see, do I have the right capacity? Do I have planned maintenance work? How do I interleave those planned maintenance and work and scheduled work so, you know, we can see, do we need to bring on some more part-time people? Do we have enough people? It just gives you that visibility. It may be completely reshuffled a week from tomorrow, but as the system knows today, and that rolling 30-day gives you a very powerful tool to look into the future. And also, you know, if you have heavy numbers of preventive maintenance or planned maintenance work, you certainly want to make sure you're interleaving those so your back end of the month doesn't look like all of a sudden we need, you know, 3 people to just do preventive maintenance work so that we don't get penalized. We want to adaptively load those jobs in, and that's a very powerful tool that we have that understands and recognizes putting in planned maintenance work at the right time, so that if you're going out for an emergency or a service call or an installation, hey, you're going to be out there, the next best work that you could be doing is, you know, the following 3 planned maintenance activities. Let's do that at the time of that emergency or planned work.
So as a result, you might see work way up into the future as a field tech. You can control how far you make things visible as well, so you don't necessarily have to reveal everything. There is a map, so I click on the map and I can see my work. These are the jobs that are assigned to me in my start and end location, driving instructions, and again, layers would show up here in the infrastructure layers, and other layers could show up here. We cache this, so again, this looks like it's live on Google, but in fact, we cache it so that if we do go out of coverage, this is still available to me as well. Messages is my view of the messaging system. We saw that on the back end, so you can see I've received a couple of messages here just from the system telling me that it automatically acknowledges some calls. I could create a new message. I could send it to the dispatcher and say I'm ready to start working. Let's make it a high priority one so we hear it. People probably say that all the time, right? And send that. So the messaging system is tightly integrated with both processes in the system and users of the system as well. Here's my view of mobile inventory. So I have a van. There's a warehouse that's associated with a technician. We call it a van. It needn't be. It could be a staging location at a customer site or somewhere else in the world. I've got visibility into what's in my stock, in my inventory. So this is telling me what I've got on hand and what's available. If there was a shipment coming in, I'd be able to receive it into van stock, and that would then become part of the inventory that I can use against the work that we're about to execute.
And all of the inventory that Ian's showing you can talk back and forth to Timberline's inventory system.
Installed base this is an example of a query. So what we haven't really explained in a lot of detail is there's no database on the mobile device. All we're really downloading are these web pages, the pages that you would see if you were browsing online. They're HTML5-based web pages. It captures the interactivity, and then we synchronize it all back and keep all the date stamps and everything else straight, which means there's no database to query. But you can build queries and enable the technicians in the field to execute those queries and capture the data they need. So this is an example of one. This is a search of the installed base. Obviously, we're not going to carry the whole installed base around, but if I had, SP1 is a part number for a serialized part within the database. If I just said, show me all of the places where those are installed, I can fill out this form and hit the search button. That doesn't get me the data. That initiates the synchronization. So it's a way of sending that query to the back end. The synchronization occurs. The results come back here as this little search results thing, and now I've got that list of parts. So this is what we call a user-defined query. It's part of the extensibility profile of the system, the capabilities of the system. And you can build user-defined queries for anything you like. And the search criteria and the characteristics of the information that come back, the mobile device is completely configurable and extensible, and over time you could build up as many of those as you like. Let's click on timesheets. As we haven't talked about events yet, but as the job proceeds, we capture information about when the technician went en route, when he got there, when he finished, and that information is used to populate timesheets. So if I click on yesterday's, you can see that this person worked, he got travel labor, travel labor, travel labor. He traveled for 3 minutes, and then he worked for 31 minutes, traveled for 3, worked for an hour and 31, and so on. So this will be populated automatically as the job proceeds, as the technician goes through his day, reporting events. As long as he reports them accurately, at the end of the day, he should be able to come in and he'd see his timesheet populated with all of the work that he did on that day. He still has to go in and account for non-working time. So if he was in meetings, let's say, for 2 hours, he might put that in, and whatever else, whatever factors might contribute to his day. And he can also override these things. So if he made a mistake and he didn't report arrival on site for this job for a couple of hours, he can go in there and say, oh, wait a minute, that was 2 hours and 31 minutes. We capture both bits of data. So at the end of the day, we know that he reported 2 hours and 31 minutes, but we computed 31 minutes. Therefore, there was an inaccuracy in the way he was reporting time. But the essence of this is that once he submits it, then that timesheet is a candidate for approval on the back end. There's a back end process where a supervisor can either accept or reject the timesheet, which we'll see when we go back to the portal, and then kind of the end of the road for us at that point once it's accepted, but it can and then be interfaced off to payroll. We use it as a source of data for performance management a great deal.
Yeah, it's nice to have this level of granularity so that you can then use your performance management. You can then in turn concatenate things and group them up. It doesn't, going into payroll and things like that does not need to be as granular level of details unless you want them to. We have customers that have highly configured the timesheet to have GL codes and all different accounting things on there so that you can have different buckets of GL codes where the jobs go into. We've interfaced to many different HR systems, whether it's PeopleSoft or Kronos or ADP and so forth. So again, this is used for two different things, for generating payroll and timesheets, but it's also used as a vehicle. All these event records get used for performance management analysis.
So let's go through one of these jobs now. If I select this job, it's in acknowledged status. And on the top right there, the next event, the top right buttons are always the next event or events that I can report. So because this is a supervisor, this person has some authority, I have the option of canceling the assignment still. No time has been expended against it, so that's a valid thing to do. Or I can go on route. So if I click on route, you'll notice the status becomes on route, and then the next event that I can report is arrived. So if I'm on my way to this job, I just clicked on route, and then the truck starts moving, and then we talk for a few minutes. The timesheets get populated with the time that's elapsing until I come along and say, okay, I'm there, and I click arrive. Now I'm in work in process status, and the next events that I can report here are these. If there's more than a couple, then it shows up as a drop-down list. So all that's happening here is the work order is proceeding through a series of statuses. En route, arrive, complete, ultimately is the finished status. And each of those statuses has a corollary on the dispatch board. Here's our dispatch board. If we look at D019, show that guy. So you can see things, my nicely planned day is starting to fall apart. Incidentally, there's the alert. I have sound off. Otherwise, that would have made a great noise. But that was a high priority alert, so it shows up as a dialog box here for me. I'm ready for work. And it also goes in my little envelope here, so I can see a complete log of all my messages at the end of the day if I want to. So as a result of reporting arrival on site at 11:26, you can see that this job has moved down to that point in time, and it's created a bit of a crisis here. We've got double booking going on. The system had planned for us to be well into job 898 at this point, and I just reported arrival on site on 260. This is an example of an event that could trigger a real-time optimization. This is a situation that the system can figure out. Obviously, we can't move the one that I've reported arrival on site on, but we can move these ones. So on day one, as we say, when you're in the crawl, walk, run mode, in crawl mode, you would let this happen, and then the dispatcher would say, all right, I'm going to take this job off here, and maybe I'm going to force this other job to be done further down the day. I'm going to drop it right down here. And, oh, look, that's unavailable because it's standby time, but I'm going to continue anyway. It is fault we started late in the first place. So I've resolved everything manually, but again, that could all be done automatically. As long as the rules are in place, then as soon as the event occurs, and the event was arrival on site, the system can detect that there's an anomaly going on, and it can run the process that will make the best decisions, that will move those jobs around. Invisible to the tech to a great extent. I mean, I would be if were taken away from me, but in effect, I'm still sitting here. I've reported arrival on site in this job, and I'm progressing through the job. So let's talk a little bit about the user interface in the mobile client here. First of all, that query, that MyCalls query, this is a user-defined query. So if this looks a bit sparse and uninteresting to you, you can make it as rich and complex as you want. It's really a function of the device you're on. This version of the client runs on Android phones, any Java-enabled device will run on BlackBerries, so depending on the real estate determines what you put into this query.
The reason we're showing this is that it has a little bit more functionality. We've launched the native, and we'll show you that. But we still, the world is evolving very quickly to tablets and smartphones. We still probably have, 60 or 70% of our customers using laptops, especially in the utility and telco world because of the things that they need. But that world is changing, as we speak.
And we're seeing both, right?
Yes.
People may use their laptops for main
Hybrid,
jobs
yeah.
and their phones for when they're in the premise or other kinds of work. The layout of the screen here, we'll see some basic information, budget, funding projects, and some checkboxes and things like that, is a user-defined screen. So the layout of the screen itself is a function of work type. You have different work types. Different work types can present different information and can solicit different information from the technician. And you can have as simple or as complex a screen as you want. This is a pretty simple one. You may have many sections to it, and as work progresses and data is reported, other fields become enabled. You've got a lot of complexity and capability there, but it can also be dead simple. If there's nothing to be done except, say, en route arrive complete, then that's all you need, and you can prune everything else away.
Yeah, we have dozens and dozens of pre-canned screens and industry screens and so forth to start from that you can use. Other customers of ours have built hundreds of their own screens for unique things that they want to capture, while other customers have, hey, every service call has or every call type has the same collection of information. You just know what needs to be collected for each one. It's a universal screen, while other customers, if there's 50 different call types, they have 50 different screens to collect things that are unique to that call type. So it can be configured at either end of the spectrum, and again, we have many screens to start from, but and the good news is that we understand the utility and telecommunications. So from starting there, we may smash together the telco and utility mobile database of screens as a good starting point for a phase 1 deployment.
Yeah, and our screens typically vary by the type of project that we're working on, and so we would need to be able to make changes to that
Yep. Yeah, you could. It'd be so if you had a particular project and the customer requires you to collect certain data, you will become very adept at adding data fields to the data model, which you can do, and then putting them on the screen. We're capturing that data for that project.
We actually have 2 levels of toolkits, screen designers. We have one that is native, we call our user-defined mechanism. Ian's referenced it several times, to build queries, to simply add fields to existing screens, to build new screens, to build new lists. It's a pretty straightforward, easy to use screen designer tool, and it comes with the system. We also have embedded the InfoPath, Microsoft InfoPath tool, so that people use our mobile platform and launch very, very complex forms. Not that we can't build complex forms with our users, but there are things that sometimes go beyond the level of forms that this tool designer would use. For example, Liquid Gas, one of our customers, has built hundreds of forms that have jump logic and mirror the exact look and feel of the forms that the government or the state or the existing paper forms. So from a change management and adoption, they just felt that was an easier thing, and they have InfoPath experts on staff that know how to do that. Some of the forms, if you roll them out, they'd be from here to the driveway, in length. But again, that's your, your business and your forms and what needs to be collected will help you figure out what the best vehicle and platform to build those.
But to that point, we're in the middle of a project and we find that a piece of information is missing. We sent the closeout packages to the customer, and the customer says, "Gee, I really needed it done this way," or "I need an adjustment." I'm assuming that if we make that change on the form, then it becomes available the next time a technician goes out or an engineer goes out to perform the work. It's available to them.
This is not client-server technology. This is real-time technology. Obviously, there's a test and development and server, and you don't want to, send things out without it being training and so forth, all the things that you guys probably No, but if you needed an emergency field that Ian needs to see, we could add that, and Ian's field would show up 30 seconds later on his on his device as a collection of information that goes out to the field. As part of the project, we configure the system to delight and meet your needs and so forth as the first phase and so forth. And we're here all the time. We're here forever, okay? But there's also the concept of what we call the user-defined mechanism. We train you to fish. We don't want to always do the fishing for you. We want, it's more expensive and so forth, but we want you to go live with something that's very meaningful and so forth. But things, life changes and so forth, that we want to empower you to use the system administratively and get the most out of it with your expert users, and there will be some number of expert users that are part of your team.
Now, one of the things we had talked about as it relates to the native smartphone app, a lot of our work involves extensive photographs.
Yep.
And you were talking about the Siri integration with that, and just talk about that in general, how you would capture.
Yep. We are T-minus 2 minutes from being there.
The only thing we want to point out here is the integration with FieldSmart. So if I click on Map, this is where the FieldSmart value-added functionality is made available. If we're not using FieldSmart, there will be just a static map of the work location. If you are, then this menu of options shows up. So you can see there's things here that because we aren't a reseller of FieldSmart, we're not necessarily in a good position to go into, but we could set up demonstrations for you with GE to look at leak survey and damage report, creating sketches and things like that. If I click on View Map, what the system does is launches FieldSmart. We send some data down to the application showing it where the work is. So this is the work order in the context of the infrastructure that's in the FieldSmart map here as well. And from there, if there were other work orders, there's other work orders that are going to show up here, and there's routing and other navigation tools that I can put into this. I can draw a sketch against the map and then capture that. We capture that as a XML file, I think, as a separate file that can then be sent to the back end and updated, used to update the Small World infrastructure database if that's what you choose to do.
So you could have this as, obviously everything's in a grid mode and so forth. You could parachute your people in and do the poll surveys and so forth. And, if there was all the infrastructure outlined on the GIS, somebody would be walking down the street, and every time they would, do an inspection, update all the inspection information, tag that they did that, and then you could look at, okay, hey, we forgot pole 272, go back and go survey pole 272, or hey, there was a significant crack or burn or whatever in a certain pole. We have to launch a more detailed inspection for that, and it generates a work order to be scheduled back for somebody else to go back and do a more detailed inspection, for example.
Now we can use this hook, incidentally. The MCP client has a hook to go to an external mapping system, and we have FieldSmart, because that's what we show. If you have ArcEsri, if you had other products in the field that you wanted to use to capture data on the mobile device, we could easily hook into those also. So we'll transition. We're going over a little bit on this phase, but we covered a lot of our second demo in the first demo. We'll go over to the mobile client and point out some of the things you were bringing out. Although I did want to point out that we can add attachments in this client also. So if you were in the laptop environment and you wanted to take pictures with an attached camera and then add them to the history of the job, you could do so through attachments there. But now let's transition. I'll close that and we'll bring up the iPad version. What we refer to as the Smart Client is available, it's one code line, and it's available on all iOS and all Android platforms, phones, tablets, whatever they might be. and the user interface adapts to the device that it's running on. So there's quite a lot of capability and complexity there.
And the union of functionality is almost there to be 100% apples to apples, and it will be. It will be, you know, in the forthcoming release.
So here's the user interface. There is a menu on the left here that shows me what I've got available to me. I can look at my employee status. Right now we're looking at my work. It's saying that there's 2 work orders out there for me to work on. And just like in the other client, as I select one, I see a form that defines the action, and you can see the different statuses. I'm pointing to the iPad. That doesn't help. The different statuses that can be reported against each one. So this is the service call that we were just in work in process status on. So the next action is going to be to close the action. There's a now and next feature, which is quite nice, I think, especially if you're using it, if it's on the chair as you're driving along or something like that. It really shows you in, this is the card metaphor, shows you what your current job is and what your next job is. And we use Cortland because that's what we've got FieldSmart for, but Cortland doesn't have very good Google pictures in it. Otherwise, the current, the Street View would show up here. If we logged in as a Boston user, you'll see the Street View. So if it is a territory that has Street View, then we show that so that as the driver is driving along, he's got some visual cues to that as well. Now, you can obviously navigate with this, and our goal with the application is not to try and reinvent pieces of software that are already resident on the device. Our goal is to use what's there. So here, we're exiting our client. We're going into the designated navigation client for the device, and if you have TomTom or something like that, you just configure it. It's a setup. You configure it, and it would use that particular piece of software. This is just whatever it is, Google stuff.
I personally like Waze, which is a social media traffic one that everybody's out there, telling you where the roadblocks are and the traffic and the police and so forth. So it's pretty cool. So you can use whatever mapping vehicle is appropriate.
So now you know where we are. That's where our office is, just outside of Boston. That's our current GPS location, and it's navigated us out to where that piece of work was, 5 hours and 11 minutes away. I can use a gesture to go back into the application again, and it puts me back where I was. Now, within a piece of work, we have, let's go to the one that's in work in process status. You have the ability to add notes. Let me open this up. So adding a note may be simply text. So I could add text, and because it's a smart device, you can use speech to enter your notes as well, and it captures that and translates it into ASCII, and that becomes a piece of ASCII that's now part of the history of the job. But I can also, as you pointed out, I can add pictures, so it's very easy to add pictures of colleagues here. Now you know where we are and what we look like. That's Glenn and John, and use that photo. You can add just a recording, text, so if it's just, audio recording, you can add that. This all becomes, again, part of the history of the job. It goes to the back end, and it's visible on the server, and it'll be visible for all of time as well as you go back through the system.
Other things it can do as well, because it is a native application, it takes on the look and feel of an Apple device. If you have a technician that is having a trouble understanding how to fix something, they can go into a FaceTime mode with another technician and really have that other technician that's not on site walk them through the job or send over a diagram and help them walk through the diagram. So there's really great social collaboration that is built within the application on the native application.
Come on, it's not mirroring it. Let me do some. There we go. Maybe our wireless network is very slow because it's lagging a little bit behind with the mirroring. We're looking at a screen and you're not seeing the same screen. We might reconnect if this doesn't. There we go. That's what we're looking at anyway. So we've got notes. Yeah, there we go. Now the forms, we talked about the specific forms for the particular kind of work. That's accessed here. This is a pretty uninteresting one. It's just got the one field on it. The forms themselves are may be different from the forms you use on the laptop. So if you have a mixture of users, and some are using laptops and some are using smart devices, you get to design, if you want to, a completely different form for the smart device, taking advantage of it. So again, it's going to use certain characteristics like capturing signature, capturing the lat long, things like that, and all be fields on a form. If you're out doing a survey and you just want to ping the lat long, you can have a field on the form that says get lat long, and it'll do exactly that. You can also have barcodes.
Or meter read. You know,
meter read, yeah.
there's a meter reading application that can launch for this.
And then parts and equipment. So if the equipment, if there are parts required for a job, they could be listed there. If you use parts on a job, you can, and the fact that there's a little barcode there means you could use the camera to barcode this in. I'll just type it in. You can put in your part number and the quantity that you used and install it, and that's now recorded as part of the history of the, it's decremented in my inventory, and it's recorded the usage of those parts against the job. We did that is also was available on the back end. We didn't actually look at it on the Windows client either there as well. As far as speech is concerned, Siri, if we again, I'm waiting for the screen to catch up with what we're doing on the device here. There we go. You'll notice that there is a little speaky thing down here, and if I hit that icon, I can use certain keywords to elicit responses from the system. So,
Your volume's down.
oh, my volume's down.
Yeah.
There we go. We need the volume to be up. Let's do that again. If the volume's down on the, I guess if the volume's down on the device, you don't hear it.
Say a command after the beep.
Next.
Current job is 235 miles away and is due in 1 minute. Job type is new install. Drive time is 504 minutes. Address is 87 WMN Street, Cortland.
And the beauty about that too is if you have a Bluetooth enabled car, when the technician gets in, or truck, when the technician gets into their vehicle, and the device connects automatically to the Bluetooth, it will automatically read the next job that you need to go to.
We have, there's a collaboration tool. This lets you see the other engineers or subs within your zone. Anyone else who's assigned work within your zone, you can get information about them. You could call them direct from here, email them direct from here, FaceTime if you needed to sort of show a video of what you're doing and maybe interact with someone. The whole idea of this section is to enable collaboration between peers within the same geographical area. And performance. We're going to talk next or soon about performance management. Here is where we would navigate to a performance management tool. We've been using iDashboards, which might show perhaps a subcontractor performance scorecard, if you want to put it that way. Let me see next. Let's navigate into it. This is going to hit our iDashboard server, and it's just going to bring up a chart that's showing downtime. So work downtime in this case being the period of time that equipment is not available as a result of work orders that were assigned to me. And you can see it's over the last few weeks, and I can actually drill down into these. We'll talk a little bit more about the whole reporting and dashboard functionality when we get back into the back end. The goal here really, and this is a very tailorable thing, is to provide
Field technician scorecard.
how am I performing against my objectives as an individual. Any questions on the mobile? We'll go back into the portal and talk a little bit about subcontractor management shortly, but any questions on the mobile client before we go any further?
One of the biggest things is user experience and change management, and the more that you can give somebody a device that that they are comfortable with, the easier the adoption. We know that at Florida Power and Light, just the fact that they were giving everybody iPads was this amazing receptivity to use the system. People didn't even care what, they were so excited to get this iPad and start using the iPad that they adopted the application. But even those of us that have smartphones and so forth, we've taken advantage of all the navigation and so forth. Not that people don't know how to use laptops and so forth, but the level of comfort and using the finger and the iconography and the images and cameras and speech and so forth any of that stuff that you can use and adopt the level of comfort that already exists in your workforce, the more relevant and receptive they will be. And we also think it's easy to use too.
It's intuitive. That's the point.
Intuitive. Thank you.
We wanted to do a scan. Someone just handed me. Why can't I see it? The barcode. Oh, I know why. Because the camera is. You have to know where the camera is, I guess. But if we have a barcode in any field that has that barcode-enabled field, then if you can focus on it, you can scan it. I guess that's the way to look at it, right? And we're using the camera, so there's no special device to do that. This is the same. We use the same technology for meter reading as well. We've got a program that we go out to that does reads the clocks on the meter. I'm handing it over to the expert because this is Lemmy's Wegmans card we're reading here. You don't have to do anything, it just does it. Yeah. Very nice. Things never work in demos. Yeah. So any other questions on the mobile application itself or how you might roll it out?
Walt, Luke, either one of you guys?
No, I've pretty much seen what I need to see, Charles.
You first note that with subcontractors, we're going to talk about how subcontractors can interact with the system shortly. And this is quite an empowering way of doing it. Most of them have phones. This is going to run on any phone. If you choose to make it available to your subcontractors, they can install it, and then they will get their work on their phone if they want to do that.
We have subcontractors working at everything from not smartphones and hitting one, to acknowledge, to getting access to a customer subcontractor portal, to empowering them with the latest and greatest. But as Ian said, there's really almost any device, whether it's Android or iOS or any kind of phone out there that one would have, is pretty likely that we have supported or can get supported. So this philosophy of bring your own device, you certainly want to, don't want to put hardships on your subcontractors to do things, but certainly there's a price of admission to do work for TrueNet, and having a smartphone or a computer or things like that in today's day and age should probably be something that's not too onerous to get them to use.
Yeah. Okay, so what remains here really is to talk about some of the other functionality in the dispatch board. Sorry for picking up a lot of windows there, specifically that pertains to subcontractors. So most of all of the work we've been talking about here, we've been planning in the context of the fact that you're in control of someone's day. So you know what their shift is, you're planning the work, and you're assigning it to them in that way. If you're not in control of their day, so if it is a subcontractor, either an individual or it's a firm, then there's an alternative view, really, of the work. Now, this isn't either or. You can do both. So here we're looking at essentially the same resources. But if I select a resource now, we're looking at the work not as a continuum of time. We're looking at it as just a sequence of jobs that need to be executed. The colors remain the same, so as the statuses change, as events get reported, the color changes. If you need to move things around, you can obviously move things around. You can drag them off the board. You can drop them on the board. If we take this person, sub-DO2 here, they've got a full day. They've already got 9 hours of work there. If I select one of these jobs, I don't know that it matters too much which job it is, as long as it's in the vicinity. I can drag it up there, and it will assign it. Now, it's assigned it even though that person already had their 8 hours of time. If I go into the profile for this guy, I must already have the profile open somewhere. got too many windows open as the day goes by. Close that. Let me start that again. Sorry, wrong window. Object named. All right. Let me do it the old-fashioned way. Sorry for this. I just needed to reconnect because we'd lost a window there. We go here. I'm going to log in again. And back to the Stack View dispatch board, and I'll click on sub DO2. And right-click and go to the resource profile. So now we just want to go down here. I just want to point out that even though this is a resource just like all the others, this resource has 1,000% workload. There's a factor called the workload, and that is the amount of time that the system is going to assign work to that individual. So most people, it's 100%. Some people you might set at 80%, which means we're going to fill up 80% of their day. But a subcontractor can be any number higher than 100%. And this really means that this resource is capable of absorbing 10 man-days worth of work in each day. So if we kept dragging work to his schedule or assigning work automatically to his schedule, eventually, if we do this guy, this D011 has less work available. If we assign work to him, we'll probably get a message, not enough capacity. It's a constraint violation. It's just another constraint, just like if you're assigning work into unavailable time. It's just telling you that you've given him his daily quota of work, whatever it might be. Notice that I have the option of assigning it, so I can actually go ahead and override this. We've set these constraints up so that under these circumstances you can override them and assign the work anyway. So this is one way of managing a subcontractor firm. They could just be, you'll manage them in the context of your own resources. So these may be individuals whose days you are managing. These are subcontractors with greater than 100% availability, which you're managing as subcontractors.
And as you'll see, depending on how you empower them to close the jobs, whether it's an end-of-day process, whether it's real-time during the day, whether you give them access to however you earmark is the best model for them, the colors will change. So as they're out there, now if you have 50 jobs at somebody and they're all still in, only an acknowledged status, and you know that they should be 3/4 done with the list, well, somebody should be on the horn, as their account manager, what's going on, please, update the status accordingly so we can understand, and that triggers payment or whatever the characteristic to get them to use this, system.
Now the other way to assign work to a subcontractor is if instead of setting them up as individual employees, you set them up as a center. So if you recall, back on our dispatch board, we had the Stoltz Center, and Stoltz is set up as a subcontractor firm. So if I select that, I actually can't see the resources. There might be 20 guys, there might be 100 guys. I'm not managing those resources, but I can redirect work to them. So if I wanted to send all of this work over to Stoltz, let's say, I just click all there, and it all gets checked, and I can click the redirect button. And this is listing the work, and it's saying, where would you like it to go? And all you're doing with redirect is really changing centers. So I'm saying, I want this work to go over to the Stoltz subcontractor center. And I redirect to the center, and that was the screen we had up before, and it's gone. It's now on their queue. If I logged in as the Stoltz, who would be an administrator within your subcontractor, all they would see is their board and the work that's been redirected to them. I still see it here, but they can see it on their board as well. If we log out, I'm just going to log out. We'll log in as the subcontractor, DO2. So I'm logging out of the portal. I'm logging into the portal again as a user in a different role. And I've logged in as DO2, and I've got a certain standard view that could be defined for me. And what this is listing is the jobs that have been assigned to me. So again, this might be an administrator within the subcontractor firm. There might be 10 guys out on the road. Maybe I print things out, or I have an internal system that I'm dispatching work out to the field with, or maybe I just next tell them and tell them where to go and what to do. However that's done, that's my business within my organization. This is a screen that gives me visibility into what work TrueNet has assigned to me. So these are the jobs that are assigned to the subcontractor firm. I've got as much functionality as we had in the back end, limited by my access. So I can't see outside of my center or outside of my zone, but I can see the details of the job, and I can report events against the job, and I can see its history.
In this portal, by logging in, this can be your subcontractor portal or a sub to your corporate subcontractor portal if you have one. But you can build as many channels. We have a couple of tabs up there, but you can have other channels that say, you know, everything from weather to security alerts to information that you want to push out, to access to a centralized SharePoint video, you know, library of things that you want to educate them or make sure it's done the TrueNet way. So, you know, we're just showing a very simplistic set of information here to record work and show the schedule. But you can use this as the launching pad to communicate whatever you want out in a series of channels. We can break the screen up into multiple channels and design it in different views and so forth. You know,
make it as simple or as complex as you want.
Here's the picture of the technician, or things like that. And again, same thing with customers. If you want to impose a customer for J.P. Morgan or something like that, you got X 100 sites or whatever, or telco customer XYZ or utility customer XYZ, they can see all their work that you're doing on their behalf.
And just like before, as I'm reporting events against this, so if I went in here and said, arrival on site on this job, I'll be updating the dispatch board as well. So that you at TrueNet are watching what's being reported by Stuart subcontractor or whoever this might be off in the field somewhere, and you've got control and visibility over that as it goes by. Okay, so the last thing we were going to look at, well, any questions at this point? Otherwise, we're going to transition back and look at performance management.
I do. Is this also an invoicing system too with this?
We can generate we can track parts cost and labor rates. Usually we do not house that in our system, but we can take that information that is housed in a Sage or a Timberline, and if it's 2.5 hours and the parts, we can generate the invoice for the for that job. We're not in a financial accounting system, but we can have a form that says, here's the invoice record, drop it off. Obviously there would be accounts payable and tracking and an invoicing system. We aren't that, but we can.
Something that could help produce an invoice.
We can produce the invoice, and deliver the invoice.
Yeah. And same with the subcontractor's view as well. Subcontractor could use that data to generate their invoice. Maybe they embellish it and then they deliver it to you.
Yeah, so we could, technically you could say, here's their rate card and so forth, and, in a matching invoice type of thing, it says, we've authorized you to 2.5 hours at $30 an hour and up to $200 worth of parts. They can submit that back, and we could have a query that says, go ahead and prove everything that's under that rate, and that total or something like that.
So for our subcontractors who use a PO system within Timberline, would this interface with that, or would this generate something more that we could use for that and integrate back to Timberline?
It could certainly integrate with that, yeah. I mean, if there is an existing source of that information in Timberline that you wanted to capture, make available to the subcontractors so they could then put in their hours maybe and the parts used, calculate the invoice and hit the submit button, that isn't such a hard thing to do in the context of an individual job. So when they're looking at the job details, they could put in that data, submit it, and that becomes an invoice linked to that job. But if they're in a situation where it's the end of the month and they want to summarize the 300 jobs they did for you this month and produce one invoice for that, I mean, not anything's possible, but obviously the functionality to do that doesn't reside within G4. And we'd have to do some work to do it. But capturing the data out of Timberline definitely does.
Well, pushing the PO information and you know, down on each work order is fine too.
Yeah.
So we can
Work order by work order.
work order by work order. We can generate the PO information down and push it down as a you know, access an API from Timberline.
Okay.
And they could certainly do queries like, you know, it would be very easy to build a query for a subcontractor to say, show me all the work orders I completed this month. You know, with all the pricing information on it, they could export that out, bring it into their personal invoicing system and generate the invoice that way. That sort of thing is quite easy to do, and you could accommodate different subcontractors' needs that way.
So guys, what we're going to jump into is performance management. What I'll tell you, what we haven't touched on yet is a lot of setup of stuff, setting up of the centers and so forth, and setting up in particular a lot of the business objectives and the rules and constraints. And we can go into that area and peel back as many levels of the onion, or you can just understand that it's very configurable, very data intensive setting. It's no longer this mystical black box. It is still a very powerful and part of the system that needs some knowledge transfer and so forth. But you know, we've built dozens and dozens of rules and constraints and in place to turn them on and build the profiles and so forth. Again, in that crawl, walk, run, we're hoping that very quickly you get to a walk or a run, and you're using the power of the scheduler to you know, introduce a level of exception management to the dispatcher, whether it's simply just geography and skills, or you know, which work orders do we assign to, you know, the 20% of the orders order types we assign to subcontractors. That's quickly, you know, just doing those levels of automation is going to, you know, introduce huge levels of efficiency. It's going to let managers manage and not be daily schedulers and so forth. But we can show you, you know, the gory details of the optimizer. But you know, my sense is maybe we don't need to go there. But Charles, I'll let you.
No, that's right. I'd like for you to jump into the performance management, do about 9 or 10 minutes of it, and then open it up to questions, and we'll get on.
Yeah.
On the creating the service calls, customers may not always have the same request, so that could be customized per the site. Is correct?
Yeah. Per project. I mean, if you've got different work types for the different projects or different customers, then we define them as different call types. They may have very similar names, right? It may always be service call this, service call that, but they could have completely different characteristics, durations, SLAs, skills and parts requirements and everything else.
Yeah, we can inherit any unique contractual terms that you have set up, you know, from customer to customer, can be inherited into the system as a unique call type.
Okay, each call would be unique to it. It'd be specific phones on specific lines.
Anything that you saw coming from being derived from the call type can be sent in through the interface. So if we have something that says a service call is 32 minutes, every time you send us a call in from wherever it's coming from, you can override that. You can have a different duration for every single job that comes in.
Or response time. Let's say, you know, it's a 1 day for, you know, for this company, and it's a, you know, 2 day for another company. We can set up, you know, service call for FPL is 1 day, service call for, you know, Laclede is 2 days, and, you know, we would know that the order generation comes in, and it'd be service call F and service call L or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to click on this here tab up here, Schedule Time Analysis, and we're going to look at future, current, and then past performance management. And what means literally that, right? So what we're looking at here are, on the top right, we've got a chart here that's looking very simply at available time and planned time. So as you're running the scheduler out into the future, this is looking 5 days into the future, it's saying that you have for a particular categorization, and this is a combination of center and work employee type. So we've got customer service center and work coordinator is the employee type that I've got there. Whereas down here it's geographical region and employee type. So here I could do, I'm looking at crews, I could look at work coordinators as well. And all we're looking at is availability, which is, you know, the shift pattern minus any meetings and things like that, and scheduled time. And you can see that going off into the future. So this is letting you know how much of a backlog you're accumulating, I guess. As time goes by, if everybody is fully booked and the availability equals the scheduled time well off into the future, then you know you're building up some backlog there. Down at the bottom is the converse of that, which is unscheduled work. So this is telling you by various dimensions how much of your work has not yet been scheduled. If you're running the scheduler 5 days into the future, this is saying, well, I guess it's just by zone, by priority, by center, and by work type, how many hours of unscheduled work is there. And there isn't much. You can see there wasn't much on the lower part of the dispatch board there. But it's saying there's 8.56 hours of work unscheduled in Cortland. And most of it's new installs, and most of it's high priority, and so on. Most of it is new install work type. You can drill into this one, so I can drill down one level further, and I can see which days its SLA expires on. And I can see this bottom one is the zip code, actually, so it's all in one zip code. So you may look at this and say, okay, I need to make somebody available in 13045 right away in order to start picking up the slack. And on the right-hand side, you've got available hours and non-working resources. So this is effectively saying that there's an available resource who is not scheduled to work for 2 hours. You can pick up 2 hours of work by calling him out, whereas here you've got 18 hours of work that you could pick up by calling people out. And here I can click on this, and I know it's hard to see down in the bottom right-hand corner, but this is showing you the list of resources that fill that category, and the next step will be to get on the phone and call up one of those and say, do you want to work tomorrow, and pick up
a little bit of a capacity planning kind of tool, you know, to say, to give you some, you know, insight, you know, understanding supply and demand, you know, and who's available to help me execute.
We have much more sophisticated forecasting and planning tools that go way beyond this, but this is using performance management to look into the database and look out into the future and see what's going on. As far as the current shift is concerned, the left-hand part of the board here deals with current time. This, incidentally, is a user-defined query, search for capacity. So this is an example of the kinds of queries you can build for yourself. And this is a pretty sparse one in the sense that it's just listing the zones, and these are the only zones I have. But this is by geographical region. It's showing me what's the shift hours, what's the available hours, what number of technicians and jobs assigned. So it's really an indication of how much work's going on and how much of your capacity you're utilizing within the shift.
That's a simple one, but any of those things can be exported out to an Excel or something for further
manipulation. It's doing a little work, but it's a simple query. Yeah. And this is a view of the current shift in terms of work statuses. So if I mouse over one of these, it's easier to see what's going on. This shows you at any point in time. So let's say it's 12:12 in an 8-hour shift. How many jobs were scheduled, acknowledged, en route, work in process, and closed? How many? There's a count of actions. So at the beginning of the day, you'll expect it to look a lot like this, where nearly everything is either in scheduled and acknowledged status. You've got a few work in process jobs, but really nobody's getting particularly busy yet. And as the day goes by, you'd expect everything to move to the right. And if it doesn't, then you need to find out what's going on, maybe drill down into this and find out why work isn't getting completed as planned. And again, this breaks it out by zone, by center, by priority, and by work type. Those are the future and the current boards. Let me go, I'm actually going to go right into iDashboards now, I think. iDashboards is the tool that we use to build our performance management capability.
And we literally have hundreds of KPIs and put them together with you. We have standard packages, but you can create your own KPIs, and you can kind of, with our help, kind of bundle them together that tell the right story. What are the things, no one KPI tells the whole story. So sometimes it's a combination of KPIs that allow you to put together a scorecard or a dashboard that collectively tell you the story that you want. This is a great one. This is a productivity and utilization where it's comparing planned work against SLAs and finding the right equilibrium. For example, if you set a utilization of, hey, I want my guys to be working 72% of the time, turning wrenches, but I also want to have an SLA of 95%. Well, hey, good news, the guys are turning wrenches at a rate of 82% of the time, but our SLA is at 90%. Uh-oh, there's something wrong with that equilibrium. Let me drill down and find out what's going on and why is that the case. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not a good thing. Let's toggle things down, and then it can flow all the way downstream to reset the optimizer. Say, hey guys, let's load balance better. Let's our business objectives should be the following. Much more conscientiously build schedules that are geared toward meeting our SLA versus traveling less or something like that. Whatever the conflicting objective and setting is out there. So this would be an example of a scorecard that I'll let Ian maybe talk to the details. So.
Okay, so just mechanically, you'll notice as we're looking at 6 weeks into the past here, and as you mouse over a particular week, as long as all of your charts are based on the same axis, it focuses all of the charts on that week. So as I mouse over this particular week, you can see they're all, as a balanced scorecard, they're all showing me different things, but they're showing me it for that one problem week. And that top left is showing, this is planned against actual. So it's our planned labor against actual labor, planned travel against actual travel. And if you get wide disparities, as we have here, something's up, obviously. You'd expect week 12 was a good week for labor because we planned to do a certain amount of work, and that's what we did. But consistently, travel is out. We're consistently out over traveling compared to what was planned. And then in week 16, everything went wrong. The green line is availability. So in actual fact, week 16 is not too bad. We worked up to availability, and you can see that was also a week where we met a great many of the SLAs.
Yeah, and in this one, you might say, boy, that's the only week we were doing well. All the other weeks, why do we have such great availability? And regardless of why are we planning so poorly? So this might be a let's look into the fact that we're underutilizing. We're only planning people for 2 or 3 hours a day when we might want to be planning them for 6 or 7 hours. But we can drill in.
We can drill it. Yeah. We can drill into this. So here you're seeing things like travel and work on a resource by resource basis. This is OWL. We can look at Bernie. You can look at individual resources to see how their time was consumed in terms of travel and labor each week. At the bottom, you're seeing a function of the workflow. This is how did work flow into the organization? How many jobs were opened? How many jobs got scheduled? How many should have been completed? Sorry, how many were completed? And how many should have been completed on a week-by-week basis? And this also drills down to the individual. So you can drill down to an individual and look at how much work was scheduled, completed, and has an SLA. And these ones sort of scroll across until you find the individual you're looking for.
And so, Donna, as Ian's talking about individuals, we can set up these charts for you to compare subcontractors and how your subcontractors are doing compared to the other, who's getting work done faster, who's meeting their SLAs, and who's getting the jobs done quicker, better, and for less money.
Okay.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. We obviously can keep going all day long, but let's reserve those 10 minutes then and see if there's anything else that you didn't see that you would like to, or any areas you want to revisit, or if there's any other questions or discussion at this time. Well, what do you want to do next?
One of the things that I noticed that we didn't highlight on the dispatch board is that any input from outside calendar we can put in there. So if you want to use this as not only setting up everybody's shifts and so forth, but you can put in their vacations, their sick time, and so forth, regular safety meetings, you can do that by individual or group. So if there's a corporate calendar or holiday schedule, that can be overlaid in. Everybody can put their individual vacations in and so forth, again, directly into the system, or fed by, if Sage is your corporate HR system, we can take that feed and put in everybody's vacation schedules and so forth.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Donna, do you have any other questions or anything else you'd like to see?
We were looking for a site. There were the same site with three different same site, different times. Is that three different work orders? In fact, is it the history kept?
Yeah, you broke up through that Donna. We only heard partial pieces of that.
Okay. How far is the history on a site? How long is that kept? How far back will it go?
As far as you like. We have, in the absence of anything else, we keep everything in the database. So you'd have all of the work that takes place at that site will be captured. There is what we call purging and archiving mechanism, which we'd tune up and configure to your needs. But in the end, everything goes into what we call the data mart. So even if we were to purge active data out of the operational database, it's all captured in our data mart, which is a separate database. It doesn't affect performance, doesn't affect the transaction time in the system, and all history is kept there for all time. And that's actually what these dashboards are driven by. These all come from the data mart.
Storage is cheap. Storage is cheap.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think, except in our very biggest customers, I don't think there's been many cases where purging and archiving was needed in order to maintain performance of the system.
Okay.
It was more just a matter of tidiness than anything else.
Okay, thank you.
What I thought you were asking, though, Donna, is, for example, if you have a central customer that has dozens of sites, we can, have one-to-many, so there can be a central customer and, hundreds of sites, if that's
that is absolutely the case. Customer that has thousands of sites, yes.
Right, yeah, exactly. So we can manage all that and be the storage point also, for each, every asset at the site as well.
Yeah, and that's what I like to drill down to is sites, not so much the customer, but the site customer.
Yep. So we have a one-to-many relationship. One customer can be one site. One customer can be unlimited sites, and each site can have unlimited pieces of equipment there.
Okay.
So what Ian has brought up is the glimpse into our new dispatch board, which is highlighting our new user experience, a little bit different color schemes and so forth. But what you see here is a lot more information. Things can be turned off and turned on, but the top board is the traditional Gantt chart with the some different iconography as you wand over, mouse over the person's name. More information comes up. Picture, current location, resources. A lot more colors, a lot more iconography inside the dispatch board itself. It can show better how calls are linked together. There's a little chain icon and so forth, different iconography. The open jobs on the bottom. There is on the left the to-do list that kind of pulls things to your attention. These are the things that rules get set up and need your direct attention or the system's direct attention to access. And maybe give a couple of demonstrations, a few things of how the things interact and scale up and down or something like that.
Right. So like Glenn said, the Gantt chart and the outstanding actions chart are essentially the same. The difference is, I don't know if you noticed it, in the current dispatch board you've got relatively, you can't really change the size of it, whereas with this tool that we're using now, everything's completely rescalable. It'll be detachable, so you could take any one of these channels, detach it, put it on another monitor if you wanted to do that. If I mouse, so within the map, let's zoom the map in a little bit. Within the map, you can see resources, which are the circles, and jobs, which are like the, I don't know what, the tiers or the pins. And as you mouse over those, everything else sort of focuses in on it. So if I put my mouse over that resource, the dispatch board focuses on the dispatch, on the individual. You can see it's highlighting Heath Prescott, and it's moved there. Same with unassigned jobs. If I go to an unassigned job here on the map, it's focused on it on the left-hand side in the channel. And if I click it, it actually sets the checkbox there. If you go to an assigned board one there, and I click that, it highlights the thing. So you can see these works both ways. Of course, I can select the job here, and it highlights it down on the map as well. So the whole goal with these three panels was to focus them on each other. If the user interacts with one of them, the other two focus on whatever he's selected. If we select an individual, it's going to show you that individual. If I go to a map, it'll center on the map, things like that. So a lot more going on in terms of keeping the user consistent with what he's looking at. With the to-do list, you define the rules, it identifies the situation. Maybe you've got a commitment to complete a certain job at a particular time and it's not getting done. So when you selected that, a couple of things happen. First of all, you take ownership of it. So there might be 10 people looking at this board. Now that I've selected that, it's telling everyone else that I have access.
You won the
to
jump
that issue.
ball.
Whereas Andrina Candles has ownership of this one there. And then it's also focused the board. So it's showing me the job that was the problem, 1305, there it is there. It's showing me on the map, and it's done the matching resources. So there's only one person in the world who could do this job, I guess. It's Sage, and it's all ready to be assigned.
But it's setting up rules. So you can see up in the filter at the top, the rule that we set up for dealing with Jeopardy is show me all the other, show me that work, show me all other jobs and all the resources that are within 3 miles of that job. So it's setting up some rules that you might, want to use, or 2 miles or 5 miles, whatever it is. It's a configurable thing to say that, if we said, 5 miles or 1 mile, it would narrow the search. So now it's like, oh, okay, look at all these people that are in 7 miles of that job that's in jeopardy. Let me to see who do I want to assign the work to. So these are just much more powerful integrated views of the dispatch board that allow you to take more control over your day-to-day life.
Okay, guys, thanks very much. I think we're going to close unless there's some other calls or other questions, excuse me. Does anyone else have any other questions, anything else you'd like to discuss?
Yes, I've got several questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, first off, you discussed being able to have subordinate tasks inside of that. Is that kind of a nested process, meaning like if you've got a work order that needs to be completed by 2 different individuals, and one of those is a subordinate task to the other, can that be assigned at the same time, or is that a
subordinate in the sense that they take place in sequence?
Yes, correct.
Absolutely, yeah. The jobs, we're in the other environment I showed you. The actions, which is the tasks you're referring to, can be created with a dependency between them, so that they have to take place in sequence. There might have to be a lag time between them. If the former one, the first one is rescheduled, then the secondary ones and so on are going to get automatically rescheduled as a result of that new time.
Okay. Can you schedule different resources for different tasks?
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, there's a one-to-many relationship, one call to unlimited actions. Each of those actions are the actual schedulable things. So in a simple service call, there might be one call and one action. In a complex or more complex one, there might be one call and many actions. Each of those actions can be scheduled to a different resource. So if there were 5 actions, it could be 5 different people or 5 different crews. In between each actions, there are dependencies that can be set up. Do the survey. If the survey gets done, then release action 2, which is lay the pipe or whatever. And the survey person can be different than the pipe pipe laying person.
Okay. The second thing is, inside of a typical installation, what is your implementation timeline?
So it varies based on what do we want to, how much do we turn on and how much integration and so forth. Things can be as short as, a 90-day deployment to get things up and running in a very streamlined way, and I think that's kind of how we've addressed things with Charles. To sometimes customers take longer, 6 months or 9 months, depending on this very detailed integration and training and so forth. But in our cloud environment, in our model, in understanding what your needs are, we're confident that we could get things up and running in a very sophisticated phase one in that 90-day period or less.
Okay, and I guess the particulars on the pricing we'll get into as far as professional services outside of the standard side as well, right?
Yeah, we've given Charles some basic pricing. What we've done is we've kind of built it together in a model for a cloud only. We have other models we can do, and we gave a price on a per scheduled resource, and that includes amortized professional services, the licenses, the annual maintenance, and the hosting, all wrapped up in a per scheduled resource on a per technician per month type of basis, or annual. We can give it in all different ways, and that gives a certain amount of days amortized in over a contract period. If we have a daily rate, we can unbundle the professional services and lower the per tech per month. We've given some examples to Charles, and obviously he can share it with you, and we can explain that in much more detail as people are ready to.
Yeah, Brad, I thought I had sent that out to all the participants. If I didn't, I'll certainly do that at the end of this meeting.
Okay. I guess that's about everything else. It is kind of SQL Server backend, but you guys would be hosting it, right?
Yeah, actually it's Oracle backend, but we would be hosting that. If for some reason you guys do want to put it in your four walls, we sell Oracle at a pretty aggressive price, and we could size the number of servers and so forth. But again, we've presented this as a hosted solution, so we take that headache away from you.
Okay.
By the way, it's our hosting partner of choice is Amazon Web Service, by far the largest hosting entity out there. Very secure, uptime, thousands and thousands of customers, private cloud, a very comfortable thing. I don't know if anybody saw the Jeff Bezos interview on 60 Minutes, but boy, they're doing some cool things as part of Amazon. But that's I digress.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not concerned about the hosting side of it all that much as far as the technology.
Yeah.
Side.
Okay.
Brad, any other questions?
No, not at this point in time. No.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, go ahead, Walt.
We might have just lost Walt.
Okay, I guess I think Walt just left. Okay, all right. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time, and thanks to everybody on the selection committee for their time today also. We certainly do appreciate it, and we look forward to getting together and getting back to you with some feedback.
That sounds great. Again, appreciate everybody's time. I know this is a long period of time to sit and look at a screen, and appreciate the questions, the attention, and if there's any questions, Charles, feel free to shoot us some notes. But we look forward to getting your feedback and update. And again, thanks everybody for your interest.
Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye now.